Well, good morning, Hasani and Danielle.
Good morning. How are you?
We're doing great. We're so excited about this session today. And our group, we're ready to get started, but I wanted to tell them a little bit about you.
Okay.
This is something, his bio. Hasani and Danielle Pettiford living out the principles they teach within their own marriage. Hasani and Danielle created the Couples Academy, a relationship-based learning institute committed to placing couples on the path to fulfillment. Hasani Pettiford is a celebrity marriage coach who has spent 17 years working with high-profile clients, entertainers, professional athletes, Hollywood and corporate executives, small businesses, owners, and professionals. Collectively, Hasani and Danielle have privately worked with couples throughout the U.S., Canada, Europe, Latin America, the Caribbean, the Middle East, and Africa. Their private and group intensives, retreats, coaching programs, and weekly counseling sessions are making an impact globally. Their expert advice has been sought after by national networks, including NBC, TLC, CW Network, BET, TV1, TVN, and WSJ. Hasani and Danielle Pettiford have been happily married for 12 years and have 4 beautiful daughters.
Well, Thank you for that awesome introduction. I need to tip the person who actually wrote that bio. But let me just say that it is indeed an honor and a privilege to be in California from Atlanta through the power of technology. This is just an awesome experience. We had the pleasure of, experiencing your pastors in terms of a group setting like this with another ministry that has a marriage ministry that does Skype sessions, and it went over quite well. And just connecting with your first lady and having several conversations with her and finally meeting the pastor. You have great leaders, great followers. And I thank you both for being bold enough and audacious enough to address issues that, unfortunately, too many churches fail to do. Unfortunately, when you think about marriage today, marriages in the church, in terms of its failure rate, mirrors marriages in the world. And we have all this Holy Ghost, we speak in tongues, we fire baptize, we have all this God, but we don't have good relationships. And so while we focus on our vertical relationship with our God, it's time for us to begin to focus on our horizontal relationships with our partners. So once again, thank you. My name is Hasani. This is my beautiful wife, Danielle, and we are Couples Academy. And we're excited to be here today. We have some great information, but I just want you to introduce yourself to the people.
Hello, everybody. It's such a blessing to see so many couples gather together to, work on their marriages. It's such a powerful thing, what you represent in the world with all the changes taking place in the government and in our laws and things. God has established marriages. It's one of the first foundations that he established was marriage. And so we know that it is very important to him. And so it really is a mantle that we should be wearing on our shoulders or carrying around and representing marriage to the fullest and showing the world that, God's way of marriage is the way of marriage, and it can be done successful, that people can live a full life, married happily, raise a family and have a legacy that goes on and on and on. I think it's so important for marriages or couples to focus on the legacy and understand that your marriage is not really about you, but your marriage is supposed to surpass you and go generations and generations beyond you. And so that's what we're here to work on, and it's a blessing to see that there are people around the world and over there on the other side of the country that feel the same way that we do. So thank you for being here with us.
Now, a couple quick things before we get started, just some preliminaries. Number one, by a show of hands, I see a bunch of people out there, but by a show of hands, how many of you have a cell phone with you right now? Raise your hand. Okay, very good. How many of you know how to text? Let me see your hands. Very good. So listen, throughout the course of today, I want to give you an opportunity to ask your specific questions And something about when married folk get together, we get all timid and shy and don't want to talk because we don't want to put our partner on Front Street, because if I address an issue, then everybody's going to know what's going on in my household or in my bedroom. So what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to give you my cell phone number. And throughout the course of our sessions today, when you have a question, text it to us. The third session is dedicated to nothing but Q&A. I want you to write my number down right now. The number is, and I'll repeat it, 678-200-8996. 678-200-8996. So as I'm talking, during breaks, whatever the case may be, just text them in and we'll make sure that we get them all and address them in the third session. Now, this is the deal. Couples Academy, the reason why we do what we do is because we're passionate about marriage, because as a couple, you know our professional background, but personally, we started off phenomenal, as most couples do. Most people get married because they fall in love. Most people get divorced because they fall out of love. So the key is learning how to maintain that in-love feeling throughout the course of the relationship. And guess what, folks? We were almost on the verge of divorce come 3 years in. Mm-hmm. I mean, we were miserable.
It's interesting. You know, you get all this education from your friends and family about what to do to get married. They tell you how to pick out your dress, how to pick out the cake, you know, the catering hall. All the details are laid out, and you think that's it until you walk down the aisle and cross the threshold and reality sets in. And, you know, unfortunately, even though we do have churches that have premarital classes, there's really not a lot of very, very, you know, concentrated focus on what it really means to become one. Think about smashing two people together and becoming one. That's what that is. That's painful. And so it's very painful to drop your habits. It's very painful to recognize your idiosyncrasies and to hear the mirror that is coming, that you're looking at, because your spouse is your mirror. So now this person sees things in you that's always been there, but that you've never seen, and it causes conflict. And for us, when we first got started, we couldn't look 360 degrees around us and find one single happy, satisfied couple that was married more than, 2 or 3 years? It was pathetic. And so we were like, wow, what are we destined for if we don't do something to change our own destiny? It looks like, if we look at the landscape of marriage, when we first got married, it was a very bleak, view. We didn't know where our future would lie.
That's right. And so interestingly enough, as we approach that third year, and now we're dealing with little babies, and it seems like before you get married, there's this in-love feeling, there's nothing but romance and chemistry, and as soon as you say I do, all of a sudden the climate or the atmosphere of the relationship changes, and the focus now becomes bills and babies and doctors and, extracurricular activity, work, church. Everything becomes about the duties and the responsibilities and the obligations of marriage. And what happens is we wind up giving up our marriage for the sake of, we give up our relationships for the sake of the marriage. What does that mean? That's confusing. Many people have made relationship and marriage synonymous, and they are not. The reality is, before you said I do and entered into the institution of marriage, you were in a relationship. And what happens is, because we have such a desire to get married, once we get married, the skill sets to have a successful marriage are different than the skill sets to have a successful relationship. Right. Your relationship is your ability to emotionally connect. It's your sexual fulfillment. It's your ability to communicate. Your marriage skills deal with what? Paying bills, delegation of responsibilities, legacy, as Danielle was talking about, is a completely different set of skills. So the relationship becomes the lowest thing on the priority list, because all the obligations of marriage become, at the top of the list. And that impacts the relationship in a powerful way. And we went through that experience. And so, 3 years in, we were on the verge of divorce. And so the reality is, I said, you know what? Rather than divorcing Danielle, I made the decision to divorce me from myself. I said, you know what? I'm going to divorce me from certain communication patterns that I learned from my household. I'm going to divorce myself from some core belief systems that don't work in favor of my marriage. I'm going to divorce myself from my false definition of masculinity that's bucking up against my relationship. And when I began to make the changes within me, all of a sudden the relationship began to change. As long as I was saying we need to,
or
do this.
You need
right.
to. You need
it was
to.
always
right.
you need to,
right.
as opposed to me looking at myself.
And to add to that, when you think about when you team up with someone, when you partner with your spouse, when you're finally married and you've done that, when that person views you and sees you, they see all of the mess that's been there the whole time. You didn't know it was there because you were by yourself. You didn't have to deal with your own stinking thinking. You didn't have to deal with all the stuff that came from your parents and your house and your habits. You might be quite happy living in a home that's a disaster. You might never lift a finger or wash a dish. Maybe you do your laundry once a month and he does his laundry once a week. Maybe you eat meat, they eat vegetables. All these issues arise, and your spouse brings that to the surface as an issue.
Yeah.
So suddenly, when you thought you was perfect as pie, now all these issues, they got all these problems with you, and you're like, well, what is wrong with this person? Like, ain't nobody ever said this. I didn't know I was this jacked up. Like, wow, and that's what happened with us because I just a little background. I have 3 brothers. I'm the only girl. There's marinade for you right there. Because I'm the only girl, I had my own room, I had my own space, And so coming from that and other things created a situation where when he had criticisms, I'm like, my brothers never said that about me. There ain't nothing wrong with me. There must be something wrong with you.
She literally thought nothing was wrong with her. Nothing.
So there's a message for parents, please don't let your children think that there's nothing wrong with them. But if they do, your spouse will certainly reveal the truth because they are your mirror. And we both had to be willing to drop down the ego.
Yes.
And take a real stiff look at our background, at our issues, and just be honest and expose within ourselves why do we think the way that we do, and actually ponder the thought, could this be a problem, and how can I change this for the better in my relationship?
And when we got to that realization, all of a sudden our relationship began to change. So as long as we started working on the relationship, things got worse. When we decided to take a look at ourselves and make internal changes within us, all of a sudden everything changed. So I tell people all the time, the lowest common denominator in every relationship that you enter into is you, because you take you everywhere you go. So making those internal changes within you, if you change, your partner now is forced to respond to your change, thus making your partner change. So by me saying, Danielle, you need to do this, doesn't change her. But when I make a change within me, she has to respond differently because I'm different. And by making that difference in me, I'm making a difference in her. I hope that makes sense. So what happens is, when you look at the statistics, we know that in the United States, upwards of 50% of all marriages end in divorce, right? So that would imply that an additional 50% of marriages remain together. But the question becomes, what is the state of their marriage? Most of us are miserable in our marriage. Why? Because of those that remain together, an additional 30% experience what we call an emotional disconnection, or an emotional divorce, or social divorce. So when you look at the 50% of people who are legally divorced, and the 30% of individuals who experience emotional or social divorce, you're now dealing with 80% of the entire marriage population that's experienced some type of divorce, and the remaining 20% are the ones who's figured it out. But the question becomes, well, what do they know that we don't? Well, that's what we're going to talk about throughout the course of this day. So we're excited to really dig in and get into the meat of things. So one of the things that we're going to discuss now is the importance of understanding who your partner is and doing everything that you can to meet their emotional needs. Now, when dealing with this concept of love, as Christians in the church, we're generally taught God's unconditional agape love, and we stop there. And though that is extremely important, there are other components that we need to be mindful of. Because you can't truly love someone unless you love yourself. You can't love yourself unless you have the love of God in you. So we're clear on that. So when your partner's acting a fool and you want to break out, that unconditional love gives you the strength and the endurance to remain in that relationship. But the reality is, if we're just existing because we're obeying a commandment, but we're still miserable because we don't like each other and we don't love each other, what fun is that? Mm-hmm. So we want to introduce the other components of love. You have phileo love, which is that brotherly, caring type of love that you have for one another. You have the eros love, which is that passionate, loving, sensual, sexual, romantic type of love. And you need all three. And what we're finding out is that many people's emotional connection and romantic connection and chemistry has completely died, and all they have is the love of God. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, that's not enough.
Yes, and it creates an imbalance because depending on your relationship, if one partner is more geared towards the phileo love and the other person isn't, now you have that struggle and that imbalance in your relationship because maybe I'm just feeling brotherly love, or maybe I'm just, giving you agape because that's what God told me to do. And we find that when you first started out in your relationship, you were giving 100%. You were showing up in agape and phileo. You were just giving it all, 100%. You were dating, you were romantic. You knew how to talk and how to act. Then you get married and you just drop it all. You show up in do-rags and, his boxers are tore up. And look, y'all, like we are human. And, there was something, whether it was emotional, mental, or physical, or all of the above, that attracted you to your spouse. And yes, we change and we age and all of that, but it is our responsibility to hold up some kind of a standard in our relationship so that we can continue to love in the way that we need to love. And so when you go into relationship, when you stop dating, when you stop doing caring things, it just becomes monotonous. I don't have to open the door for her anymore. She got it. Or, I see he likes me to cook his food a certain way, but I like it my way, so I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to put a little spice on it. Or, I see her carrying those bags in. She's strong. She got a broad back. She could do it. We need to continue to consider our spouse the way that we used to. It was easier when we first started because there was such a newness there. But now it's something that you need to practice. Yeah.
So we're going to talk about understanding your spouse in a powerful way. So listen, the reality is there are emotional needs that we all have. And if you can identify the emotional need in your partner and meet that need, that in-love feeling will remain. Statistically, it is suggested that the in-love feeling that you initially have only lasts for the first 2 years, and then all of a sudden it kind of tanks, it dies out. But you can learn skill sets to maintain that emotional connection, and that's what we're here to talk about. So there are the five most important emotional needs for a man, and the 5 most important emotional needs for a woman. Now, as we move through the list, keep in mind, they have just been categorized by gender based upon study, research, and statistic. However, anybody could identify with these emotional needs that we're going to go through. But just based upon surveys, it seems to fall in certain categories. So let's quickly go through the list, and then we'll get into some great discussion during your break. So the most important emotional need for a woman is affection. So write that down, affection. Now, when we're talking about affection, we're talking about your words of affirmation. We're talking about the giving of gifts. We're talking about nice, caring, compassionate gestures. Your ability to show your loving care and compassion for your partner. Exactly. Why is that important for women, Danielle?
It's really important for you to know your wife too, because affection can mean a lot of things. How do you receive affection? If that just means being considerate, or whatever it is, you need to sit down with your spouse and figure out what that is, because it's not always touching. It's not always, a gift. Sometimes it's just, a nice act of service, or, a kind word, or sometimes it's, just letting the person know that you're there and supporting them. And it's very important for a woman to feel that that her spouse cares for her and considers her and covers her. It's really a great need for a woman.
Affection. Now, what's interesting, as that's considered one of the most important emotional needs for a woman, one of the most important emotional needs for a man is sexual fulfillment. All right? So write that down, sexual fulfillment. Now, we're going to spend an entire section just on sexual fulfillment. But just to quickly touch on it, this is the deal. This speaks to the sense of humor of God, right? So women have a desire for affection, or what we call non-sexual touch. Men have a desire for sexual fulfillment. Now, women's thing is, well, if you give me the affection I want, I'll give you the sexual fulfillment that you seek. Mm-hmm. But men are like, well, so I got to go through all of this work in order to get what I'm supposed to have. I mean, we signed up for this. That's what marriage is all about, right?
Right, and also, we talked about this before, that in many ways, and this helped me to understand your sexual need, because I just didn't get it. I'm just like, really? Like a gift? But for a man, it's almost synonymous, that affection. Like, you receive your affection through sexual acts. Isn't that right? Mm-hmm. And so for a woman to understand, or maybe wrap her mind around his sexual need, try to understand your need for affection and attention and touch, or whatever your emotional need is from him. That desire, that longing, try to understand that as his desire and longing for sexual fulfillment.
Yeah. So sexual fulfillment is a huge piece. And listen, it is generally assumed that men are the ones with the desire and women are not. And we're finding, particularly as we deal with many couples, that that's not necessarily the case. You have many women who have a much higher sex drive than even the husband. Mm-hmm. And so, we've seen, not that it's a gender role reversal, it's not even about that. I just think that there are so many generalizations when it comes to issues of relationships, and now we live up to these generalizations, and it causes problems in our relationship. So we're going to talk about how to get that type of sexual fulfillment in a relationship, whoever has that particular need. But going off to the third emotional need, the second one for the woman, it would be intimate conversation. Now, this is so critically important. I don't want you to confuse intimate conversation with communication.
Right.
Intimate conversation is a component of communication. Mm-hmm. And when you think about the word intimate or the word intimacy, it simply means into me see. I'm allowing you to see inside myself. I'm allowing you to see inside my heart, inside my emotions, inside my mind. And what we found is that many couples, the longer they're married, the less they talk. The reality is, if most of you have a job, you spend 8 hours to 10 hours a day on your job communicating with employees, coworkers, customers, your boss, everyone else. And statistically, the average couple only communicates for 5 minutes a day. Mm-hmm. That is horrible. Mm-hmm. So you've developed these strong relationships with everyone outside of your household than the one that you live with. Now, listen, according to surveys, it is said that men communicate in 10,000 words per day. However, women speak 25,000 words per day. So if a husband is on his job and he's communicating and talking with everybody, by the time he gets home after talking, 9,800 words, he only has 200 words left. Meanwhile, if that wife used the same 10,000 words, by the time she gets home, she's got 15,000 more words to use.
So you see the problem, right? It's like you really need men. You really need to save some of those words for your wife, because what men do, and I've heard it, we've talked to men all around the world, they're like, why does she keep talking? Like, how long is she going to talk? They just want to be quiet because they're empty. Well, then you need some quiet time on the workplace, quiet time during the day, so that when you come home, you feel harmony, with your wife because she's ready to go. Now, listen, we're all working now. So we wives, we've used up plenty of words along the day too. So truth be told, I don't have that much to say at the end of the day. But save a few words.
Exactly.
Men, save a few words. Yeah.
Exactly. Because the gender differences when it comes to communication is this. Listen, it's always been said that men speak in bullet points and women speak in paragraphs. Mm-hmm. So now she's giving these long, elaborate, descriptive explanations of just whatever, and he's just got a couple of words. And there's the frustration, well, she just stopped talking, and her frustration is this dude don't ever have nothing to say.
Right. Why doesn't he talk to me? What's wrong with him? What's he thinking? You know, you make us go way too far. You know, because now we're trying to figure out, what are they thinking? Why are they so quiet? Are they in a good mood? What's going on when they just want to be quiet?
So intimate conversation is more than just, oh, how was work? Oh, work was work. Or, hey, did you catch that, story on the news today? Intimate conversation speaks to, let me speak into your heart. Help me to understand you. Let's have deeper levels of communication and conversation in our relationship. There is a phenomenal book entitled The 7 Levels of Intimacy. And it talks about how most couples, no matter how long they've been together, never get past that second or third level. But that in fact, the deeper levels of intimacy that speak to your fears, your frustrations, your fantasies, your deepest desires, your opinions, all of those different things we never get to because there's so much noise that exists between us, the noise representing past hurts, past pains, disappointments, the time that he said something outside of his mouth and got on my nerves, or the time that she did such and such, that becomes the noise. And it creates a wedge in between our ability to come together and to become intimate. Now, when we say intimate, we're not just talking about sex. Mm-hmm. That is sexual or physical intimacy. But you also have emotional and intellectual intimacy. And that's what we're trying to get you to as it relates to intimate conversation. So men, save up some words, write down some ideas of what you need to talk about once you get home, and engage in conversation uninterrupted. We got to talk about that.
We got to talk about uninterrupted.
Because that was my issue.
Yeah, okay. A part of thank you. That is interrupted communication, folks. I know this is 2015. And I know everybody's walking around with a device 24 hours a day. It's almost, I sometimes think of it like it's somewhat of an insecurity because we're so used to walking around with these phones. God forbid we're standing somewhere and there's no one to talk to. We're going to start talking on the phone. But when you're with your spouse and you have set aside a time to communicate with your spouse, no devices. That means at dinner time with your family, no laptops, no cell phones,
no tablets.
If you're somebody that's in high demand, like Hasani, people are always trying to reach out to him. He's literally got to turn his phone off or not bring it to the table or not bring it into the room because of the distraction. Your phone is dinging, binging, zinging, singing, ringing. It's just constant. And it really is, it's sort of like the other woman. It could be like the other woman or the other man when you're constantly in a conversation with your spouse. And you said all this, imagine you're having intimate conversation. You're really sharing something that's really important to you or something that happened during the day that was upsetting to you. And your spouse is on the phone texting away. And you're like, well, what do you think? And she says, huh? Or he says, well, can you repeat that one more time? So it's like an interruption in your communication. Is disrespectful and it's hurtful. And so we got to really start putting our own fences around what makes sense within our relationship. Yes, societal norms change and things come in and out. Cell phone, holding the cell phone is in now. Next, they're going to, try to stick it into your skin is what they tell me. And that's when I won't have a cell phone, when they start sticking stuff under your skin. But the point is that even though societal norms are changing the way that we behave, we have got to have government within our relationship so that we don't let these things come into our yard and ruin our relationships.
Powerful. All right. The second most important emotional need for a man is recreational companionship. Mm-hmm. it's always been said, men, we don't do relationships. We do hobbies, we do sports, we do extracurricular activities. And even when we get married, we still have our passion, we still have our thing, and we need to be given the space and opportunity to continue to engage in that thing. Now, this manifests in two ways. So either A, I've got to have an outlet because, that's just what I do. I grew up playing sports. I love it. I go to the gym 3-4 times a week. I need that time. So that's one way. So supporting my recreation is so critically important. And we find that so many women in particular, and it could work both ways, don't understand that how important this thing is to him. And so oftentimes, you talked about the other woman, will treat the hobby as if it's the other woman and get mad at our spouse because of the recreation that he seeks and that he needs. Now, yes, there are many men who don't understand balance and who deprive their spouses and their children of the quality time that they need for the sake of the hobby. That's when you're operating out of order. I'm talking about balance. But now, part two to that is there are certain things that men want or desire to do that they would love the support and the participation of their woman. Likewise, a woman to a man. Like, for instance, some women love to go shopping and would love to have their partner be with them, spending 18 hours of a Saturday going through every aisle.
Patiently, without complaining or looking sour in the face, mad, holding a bag. And it's you see that? Now, here's the other thing, right? Your recreation doesn't necessarily have to be sports. Like, Hasani's a reader and can spend the whole day at Barnes & Noble. So, but now for me, that's like boring. Once I get my magazine, I'm ready to go. But as a supportive wife, this is important to him. So it needs to be important to me. And that's all it is. This is not a life sentence. This is a moment in time and space where you're showing your partner that you care about what they care about.
Because I'm going to tell you something, and this is real talk. I'm an infidelity recovery specialist. So 90% of all the clients that we see are impacted by the pain of infidelity. And one of the many reasons why infidelity can take place is because, you know what? She doesn't share my passion. So I have to, matter of fact, every time I bring it up, just go ahead, just do whatever, just go. Or it's vice versa, however it goes. And so now he'll go out, all vulnerable, participating in this hobby, and will connect with someone who has the same passion, right? And so now they're building a rapport and a relationship based upon the passion, based upon the commonality. And so what happens is lines become blurred, and all of a sudden what was appropriate becomes inappropriate. What is inappropriate then becomes platonic, and I'll explain that. What becomes platonic then becomes intimate. Now, many of you who said, well, you know what? I've got opposite sex friends, no big deal. They're just platonic relationships. But guess what, folks? By definition, the word platonic, and you can look it up, is defined as having an intimate and affectionate relationship with someone void of sex. Now, let me ask you a question. How intimate could you be and affectionate could you be with some quote-unquote platonic friend without the desire or the temptation for sexual fulfillment entering into the equation? How comfortable would I as a husband be for Danielle to have some intimate, affectionate, interaction with somebody that she works with and I'm cool? It doesn't even make sense. So what you want to do to keep those things from taking place is making sure that you play together. As Christians we're taught, couples who pray together stay together. And that's true. But couples who play together also stay together. And when you do that, you build up a hedge of protection around your marriage, keeping anyone else from entering in, or keeping a temptation that comes from within from building up and seeking outside of your marriage what you're not getting inside your marriage. Wow. All right. Let's go to the next one. In terms of the emotional needs of women, the third emotional need is honesty and openness. Powerful, powerful, powerful. Honesty and openness. This is another aspect of communication, but on a much deeper level. So one of the biggest challenges that men have that women complain about, once again, is that he doesn't talk. He doesn't open up. He doesn't share. He doesn't get deep into his emotions. There's like a block there. There's a disconnect there. And when I'm trying to really have heart-to-heart conversations and to discover certain truths about things, he doesn't go there. And so many of us are walking around with masks and disguises and false faces, and we don't mind becoming physically naked with one another, but to become emotionally naked, that's just too much for us.
It's a personality type, and that was my personality. Cover it up, or it doesn't. Certain things just don't need to be spoken of. So if you have the type of personality where, and usually it's an opposite type of thing, like one has the personality and one doesn't, where you believe that certain things just don't need to be said, or certain things just don't need to be dug up or uncovered, or I don't see the point, I don't understand the point of discussing things that happened years and years ago. Your spouse simply wants to understand the way that you think, why you do the things that you do, understand your history, understand you fully, become completely intimate with you. But for you, if you are the person that is private, I've heard a lot of people say, well, I'm private. That's just how I was raised. In my family, we didn't talk about these things. That wasn't necessarily a good thing. That is actually my marinade. I come from a family where people didn't talk about who their father was because some of them didn't know. It was just something you didn't talk about. And so because of that, you grow up in that kind of thinking, and it's the way you think, but it's not the right way of thinking. When you decide to marry somebody and become one with someone, you should have no walls or no division, nothing uncovered with your spouse. And so that's something that when we were working on our issues, I had to really work on just letting my walls fall down. Like, you guys are brave. I remember being in our training situation where we were actually working on our marriage, and I'm sitting there thinking, like, I ain't telling nobody none of my business. Like, this is, I don't know why we're here. I can't handle this. It was a real struggle for me because of my privacy issues. Just like, I don't want to expose anything about me, anything about my family, and that's a big issue. And we had to work through that. And if that's something that you're dealing with in your relationship, it's really something that you need to work on internally and really look at why is it that you feel that certain things or certain discussions are off limits with your spouse.
And to that point, so many people have a problem opening up and sharing intimate details about their present and their past with their partner, but they have an outlet, whether it be a girlfriend, a male friend, a friend, well, whoever, and will tell everything. And that's a problem. So you have more of an intimate relationship with someone else than your own spouse. That is a major problem. On top of that, there's so many individuals that have a horrible habit of putting their families and marital issues on Front Street before the world to see, exposing your partner.
Two extremes.
Right.
And you'll find two partners that one's the extreme that tells all their business, and then there's the other one that's extremely private and doesn't want to divulge anything.
So you need to find that fine balance in order for the relationship to work. Now, Danielle mentioned a word twice, and I want to give some clarity. She said marinade or family marinade. Really quick, if you cook, as Danielle does a great job of, if she's making, say, chicken, and we're used to, say, eating fried chicken, and she may want to switch it up. She'll go to the supermarket, grab a marinade that represents a different flavor, come home, clean the chicken, take the marinade out, mix it into the chicken, and then put it in the refrigerator for a few hours or overnight so that the marinade can soak and saturate into the meat so that when you cook it, you can taste the marinade in the meat. That's how it works, right? Mm-hmm. Well, all of us have a family marinade, where we've been soaked and saturated in certain belief systems and thought patterns and behaviors that we take from our childhood into our adult relationship that causes sometimes a problem. Now, there's some good marinade that you can take from your family and some bad marinade. But what happens is, because you come from a different family background than your spouse, when you two come together to create a new family, now you have conflict. Why? Because conflict is nothing more than two agendas operating at the same time in the same place, and they clash. So you have to, in essence, detach yourself or unlock yourself from certain family patterns that don't serve you to create a new tradition, a new culture, and a new form of government within your home. Does that make sense? Now, you hear all those babies in the background. If you hear screaming, those are my kids. acting. So just let's move forward. All right. So we're at where are we at? Oh, the next emotional need for a man, the physical attractiveness of a spouse. That is so hugely important. Now, just for clarity, we're not saying that your wife has to be some bombshell or your husband has to be some runway supermodel that travels around the world. That's ridiculous. And even, when we hit our 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, some of us still have this 21-year-old perspective of what our partner needs to look like, and it's not realistic. And it creates all types of frustration, and it creates an imbalance in the relationship. So it's very important that you be respectful of your partner, but the key is doing your best to be your best for your spouse. So if that means getting in the gym and, managing your weight, if that means putting on makeup, it's so interesting. Men complain about this all the time. I'll speak as a man. Our women, as beautiful as they are, will dress up and put on their makeup and their clothes and their perfume to leave us and go to work, go to church, go out with their girlfriends, and when they come back home, they got their do-rag on, their ripped shirt. They coming in the bed looking like a hockey player. They got a helmet on, shoulder pads, knee pads, stick in their hand, skates on in the bed. Like, what you got skates on in the bed for? So it seems as though we do the exact opposite. You should be dressing up and beautifying yourself for your partner. Likewise for men. Listen, women have eyes too. And they want to feel as if they have an attractive spouse. Some men walking around looking like they pregnant. Some men walking around not caring about their health. Beyond your looks, your health. Men die earlier than women. And women are left holding the bag because we won't go to the doctor. We won't go to the hospital. We scared about some news that we don't want to hear. And now, not only are we not physically attractive to our partners, not only can we not perform the way we want to perform, but just functioning in society. We're dealing with disease or dis-ease. And whenever you're dealing with dis-ease, there is a financial obligation attached to that. And so it just weighs heavy on the entire family when you don't take the time to be your best self. Hope that makes sense. Let's go to the next one. The next emotional need for a woman is financial support. Boy, did we struggle with this earlier in our marriage.
Yes, we
because
did.
I'm an entrepreneur. I'm traveling. There are times when I'm making big money and times when I'm making a little bit of money. So when there was a drought and a dry season, boy, it felt like that thing lasted forever. And because we didn't have the best money management skills, it caused a humongous issue in our marriage. And really, why is financial support an emotional need? Well, how did it emotionally make you feel when I wasn't able to be what I needed to be for the family?
It made me feel that I wasn't safe, I wasn't protected, that there wasn't any certainty, about what was going to happen tomorrow. We had very, very small children. We had our first child and our second child were babies. They were 14 months apart, and we were hustling entrepreneurs, and we were living feast and famine was really, really, really bad. And that the fact that we did feast and famine, even when we were feasting, there was still that insecurity because I knew famine's on the way, and when will this all level out? And so it's a roller coaster. A woman, even though we support ourselves and women work and all of that, we still need to feel that our men have our back, are supporting us, and are covering us, essentially.
So financial support is humongous. Let's go to the next one. In terms of men and women, this is shared by many, domestic support. Now, domestic support means something completely different depending upon the gender. I hear a lot of husbands complain how much of a wreck the house is. Every time I come home from work, the dishes and the clothes and the laundry, and I just want a peaceful, safe haven of a home where there's order and structure. Now, on the flip side of that, many women complain about the fact that I don't have any help. The reality is, if we both have jobs, right, from 9 to 5, by the time men get home, now women hear this, men get home, they need time to regroup. They need a couple of minutes to just settle in and to have their peace and all of these wonderful things. So as soon as they walk through the door, you're throwing problems and issues and babies and all these things are coming at them all at once. For some reason, men just need some time to just get it together before they can re-enter into the family. However, women who work from 9 to 5, once they get home, now they've entered into their second shift. Now they have to work from 5 to 9 because they're dealing with babies and homework and extracurricular this and family planning and cooking the meals and preparing for the next day. And so their job never seems to end. And they get frustrated because men are getting the benefits or the blessings of the marriage and women receive what they call the burdens of the marriage. She's got the roles, the responsibilities, the obligations, and he gets to enjoy. So there's an imbalance in terms of the family structure, in terms of the delegation of responsibilities. And so when we're talking about establishing government in your home, we're talking about gender issues in the household. And understanding what that means and how that's played out, and making sure that both of you are mutually in agreement with how things are functioning so that she has some sort of peace. Because guess what? At 11 o'clock at night, when we go tapping on her shoulder, wanting her to come into the bedroom, after she's spent and tired and exhausted, the last thing she's thinking about is giving us some sex. That's why they say a man who washes the dishes is considered sexy to a woman, because now he's participating and involving himself in things that release her responsibility so that she can breathe. So it's such a powerful, powerful, powerful conversation to have with your partner in terms of understanding the roles that need to be played within the household for it to function effectively.
Amen. We just have to balance things out and stop blaming each other, because whatever you can blame your partner for, there is something that you can sit down to negotiate so that it's balanced out. Everybody takes a part of the burden. Everybody takes a part of the relaxation, and it just works out. So we've really got to start looking at our relationships, looking at what's going on in the dynamics of our relationships that's causing us the frustration, and figure out how we can dissolve those issues.
Now, 2 more to go. All right? The next one is family commitment. Family commitment. This is more of an emotional need for a woman. And guess what? Oftentimes,
do we not understand that you are emotionally committed even when we think you're not? Because I think about with our children and you being busy out working, traveling the world. And when you come home, we're like, daddy, 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 or husband, 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 we need you to do X, Y, and Z. So is it that we're not understanding the level of commitment that you are putting in?
Very good question. See, because men, we think in a one-dimensional way. Many of us, not all. So we think, well, our role as husbands is to be the provider. And as long as I'm doing that, I'm good. And while that is critically important and helps to sustain the household, you have to show up in other ways. You have to show up in terms of your participation and involvement with those children, with family issues. And so a lot of times men are guilty of being what we call overworkers, right? We're workaholics, and so, because we need to hustle and provide for our families, we will work 10, 12, 14 hours. Or if it's not about work, we're so busy doing extracurricular things and pursuing our hobbies and passions that we leave the wife home with the kids to just do everything, and it becomes frustrating. We're meeting an emotional need in the woman when we begin to love on our children and participate in family activities. In essence, I was turning her on by involving myself with my own children. It was meeting an emotional need in her. And so we have to understand it's more than just flowers and I love you and nice cards that express your love to your partner. It shows up in so many other ways. Now understand, the family comes from the husband, comes from the father, because it comes from our seed. She carries the seed, delivers the seed, but those children belong to us. And fatherlessness in our African American community is humongous. And so many of our families are destroyed today or shattered today because we haven't stepped up and stepped forward and fulfilled our role, not just as a husband, but as a father. When there's a spirit of the father in the household, it seems like the dynamics of that household is completely different. So family support is humongous. And last but not least, this is an emotional need for men, and that emotional need is admiration. Men need to be admired,
Yes.
to be respected, to be looked up to be encouraged, to be supported. Because if a man feels the support of his woman, he feels as if he can take over the world.
That's right.
But if he doesn't have the support of his own woman, that's a destroyed, broken man. And there's so much discord between husbands and wives. There's so many women calling that man out of his name. Is that like
Is that a motorcycle?
Is that a motorcycle or in trucks?
Yeah. We got a lot of traffic. We're on a boulevard. Yeah.
You sure are on a boulevard.
Even airplanes pass through.
Wow. So when a man is given admiration, he's able to, like, his back gets stronger, his shoulders rise up, his chest sticks out, and he has a boldness to be able to conquer the world. See, every man and woman has two personalities. They have the lion and they have the lamb. And what happens is, oftentimes, the lion comes out with our partner out of frustration because we don't feel supported. And because we don't feel supported and don't think we can conquer, we enter into the world as the lamb, that soft, pliable, version of ourselves. But it should be the other way around. We should have so much support coming from our homes. We're giving our partners the lamb personality, that loving, caring personality. But because she's built us up, when we enter into the world, we give the world the lion. We give the world our strength. And we're able to, as the king, of the world, lions are the king, right? They're able to go out there and seize things and take over and bring all the booty, as they call it, back to the household so that the family can benefit. And so encouragement is critically, critically, critically important. These are the emotional needs of men and women. There are 10 of them. So what I would love for you to do, we're going to take a break. I'm going to give you a 45-minute break, and we'll catch up. We'll get caught up on our time here. But we have a handout for you that we want each of you as couples to do together. Now, I see the church is kind of big. If you, as a couple, just go in a different section of the church where it's just you two, I want you to take the time and complete the questionnaire and then to engage in conversation with each other. And you're going to rate your partner, in the areas of these emotional needs. You're going to identify what your emotional needs are and rate your partner in terms of how successful they have been in communicating and meeting that emotional need. So this is going to be a great exercise for you, and I think it'll bring a lot of clarity and direction, as you go forth as a couple. And then we'll pick up at the end of that session and go into our next topic. But listen, now, once again, I'm sure many of you have questions. I want you to text me.
Or comments.
Okay, questions or comments. I want you to text me at 678-200-8996. Now it's 2 o'clock. How about we pick up at 2:45? Does that work?
Yes.
Now, the reason why we're doing this, folks, and I'll let you go, is because sometimes, you go through seminars and you're dumped with all this information. You only retain 10% of what you hear, and you leave unchanged because you didn't go through any type of experiential learning. This break, where you two come together as a couple and complete the assignment and engage in conversation, you have new aha moments, new revelations, and you'll be able to shift your relationship in a new order based upon what you're doing. So that's why we're taking these breaks, to give you what you need so that it's sustainable. So I'll see you at 2:45. I hope you enjoyed the session. I got the phone in my hand waiting for your text questions. See you a little bit later. Bye-bye.